Today we're going to talk about a teenage king who literally built a whole nation from the ashes of a fallen empire. This is the incredible story of Clovis I, the guy who basically created France. So let's dive right in. So what happens when a gigantic, powerful empire just collapses? I mean, that's exactly what went down when the Roman Empire fell in Western Europe. All of a sudden, there was just chaos, right? But with all that chaos came a massive opportunity for new leaders to step up. And this situation, historians have a name for it, a power vacuum. Okay, so what exactly is a power vacuum? Well, it's pretty simple, really. It's when there's no one in charge anymore, leaving this huge empty space for new groups to flood in and try to take over. And you know who was one of the most successful groups to do just that? A collection of tribes called the Franks. Right. Now, leading one of those very tribes was the main character of our story, a super ambitious young warrior named Clovis. Okay, so Clovis's rise to power was unbelievably fast. He inherited the throne from his dad when he was only 15 years old. Think about that. But he was not going to be content with just ruling a small kingdom. Nope. Just 5 years later, he's leading his own army against what was left of Roman power in the region. And that big showdown happened at the Battle of Soissons. This is where Clovis and his Frankish warriors completely crushed the Roman commander Syagrius. I mean, they basically wiped the last trace of Roman authority right off the map of northern Gaul, which, by the way, is pretty much modern-day France. And just like that, with one single victory, his kingdom got a whole lot bigger. But, there's this one famous story from right after the battle that tells you everything you need to know about Clovis's personality. So a bishop asks him to return the special vase. Clovis says sure. But then one of his own soldiers, who's angry that the king gets special treatment, just walks up and smashes the vase with his axe. Now, Clovis, he stays totally calm. But a year later, during an army inspection, he finds that same soldier and kills him on the spot. The message? It was brutal, for sure, but crystal clear. You do not mess with the king. So yeah, he was a ruthless warrior, no doubt about it. But that's not the whole story. His next big move was a total game changer, involving a strategic marriage, a really desperate battle, and a decision that would literally change the course of European history. So Clovis marries Clotilda, a princess from a kingdom next door. Now, this was a really smart political move, but there was a catch. See, Clovis and the Franks, they worshiped their traditional Germanic gods, but his new queen, Clotilde, was a very devout Catholic Christian, and she was always trying to get him to convert. At first, Clovis wasn't having any of it, until he found himself in a really bad spot at the Battle of Tolbiac. He was fighting another tribe, the Alemanni, and his army was getting absolutely destroyed. I mean, his soldiers were running for their lives. Defeat looked inevitable. And in that moment of pure desperation, he apparently remembered what his wife had been telling him. He looks up to the sky and basically makes a deal. "God of Clotilde," he says, "if you give me this victory, I'll be baptized in your name." And well, the story goes that the tide of the battle immediately turned. The enemy leader was killed, and somehow the Franks pulled off a win. And Clovis, well, he kept his promise. After that incredible victory, he was baptized into the Catholic Church. But he didn't just do it on some random Tuesday. No, he picked Christmas Day for the ceremony. And get this, thousands of his own warriors were baptized right there with him. And you have to understand, this was so much more than just a personal religious decision. It was an absolutely brilliant political move. Why? Well, by becoming Catholic, Clovis immediately got the powerful church on his side. Plus, he won over the local people he was ruling who were already Catholic. Suddenly, his whole kingdom was united under one faith. This forged an alliance between the French monarchy and the church that would last for centuries. Okay, so with his power base totally secure, Clovis started to shift his focus. He wasn't just a conqueror anymore. He was becoming a nation builder. And what he did next would lay the actual foundations of France. By the time he was done, Clovis had united almost all of the scattered Frankish tribes and crushed his rivals. His kingdom was just massive. It stretched all the way from the Rhine River down to the Pyrenees Mountains. I mean, this huge chunk of land, it's basically the foundation of what we now call France. Of course, every big kingdom needs a capital city, right? Clovis picked a small, easy-to-defend spot on an island in the Seine River to be his center of power. And that city? Paris. Just think about that. A choice he made over 1,500 years ago is still the heart of France today. But think about it. How do you actually keep order in a kingdom that big and diverse? Well, Clovis had a solution for that too. He created one of the first written legal codes for the Franks, called the Salic Law. This was a massive deal because it took all their old, unwritten tribal customs and turned them into formal, official rules that everyone had to follow. And here's how it worked in practice. Instead of, endless cycles of violent revenge, the law set up a system of fines. So, for example, if you stole a cow, there was a specific fine you had to pay. If you injured somebody, same deal, a specific fine. But there was one rule in particular that had enormous consequences. It said that women were not allowed to inherit the throne. And that one rule, that single rule, would be used to justify centuries of conflict, including the 100 Years' War, all because it stopped women and their kids from ever claiming the French crown. Clovis eventually died in the year 511 after a 30-year reign. But the kingdom he built and the dynasty he kicked off, well, they would cast a very, very long shadow over European history. Now, the Franks had this tradition that frankly caused a ton of problems. Instead of the whole kingdom going to the oldest son, it was split up equally among all 4 of Clovis's sons. And as you can probably guess, this almost always led to jealousy, backstabbing, and straight-up civil war as the brothers fought each other for more power. So the dynasty that Clovis started, the Merovingians, they managed to rule for about 250 years. They got this cool nickname, the long-haired kings, because long hair was seen as a symbol of their power and the right to the throne. And even with all that family drama and infighting, their biggest achievement was creating that first unified kingdom in Western Europe after Rome fell. Eventually, though, their power faded and was taken over by their own top officials, the mayors of the palace. When you put it all together, the military conquests, that super smart religious conversion, and the creation of a unified legal code, Clovis really did lay the foundation for a brand new European power. And that's why, to this day, he's still known as the founding father of France. So it's pretty amazing, right? From the ambition of a single teenage king, an entire nation was born. And it makes you think, when you look at a major world capital like Paris, or the long, complicated relationship between church and state in Europe, you have to wonder, how much of the world that Clovis built 1,500 years ago are we still living in today?